Hello again. Let's continue studying more about English. And this time we're going to study about state verbs or stative verbs and action verbs. So we know that verbs are basically actions, right? Or activities that we do, are words that describe activities, but we can divide them into state verbs and action verbs. And we understand by action verbs most of the verbs that actually indicate movement, right? Or any type of movement. Yeah, they express actions that indicate movement, and we can use them in many different forms. So those are action verbs. But we have other types of verbs. We also have state verbs, and state verbs do not indicate actions or movements, right? They indicate, for example, how we think. They also indicate what we feel, and they also indicate what we possess or what we experience. So those are abstract concepts, right? They are not indicating actually movement. So an action verb would be, for example, play, run, read, talk, jump, drive, skate. Yep, those are action verbs. And action verbs can be conjugated in the continuous form because the continuous form indicates an action that is in progress, right? So action verbs can be in progress because they indicate movement. Now, state verbs, as I said, they are abstract verbs or abstract concepts. They are not indicating movement or physical movement, but they're indicating probably mental activities, right? And things that are always in a state form, that they don't change. They are complete. They are or they are not. They are not are, right? So they exist or they don't exist. They are not in the process. They cannot be in the process. They cannot be existing for a period of time. So some state verbs are know, a mental process, like, preferences, love, the same, and also believe, right? So remember, state verbs, they indicate how we think, mental states, what we feel, what we possess, things that are true or not true, right? Positive, not positive, and also what we experience. So think about that. And the characteristic that differentiates state verbs and action verbs is that action verbs can go in the continuous form with ing. State verbs cannot go with ing because they do not indicate process. They do not indicate an activity in process. They exist or they don't exist. Okay? So that's the difference between state verbs and action verbs. Now, you have probably heard the slogan from McDonald's, right? I'm loving it. Now, this phrase is grammatically incorrect because we know that love and many verbs that express what we feel are state verbs. And you can say, okay, but what is the problem with saying I'm loving it? Let's think about that. When we indicate that we love somebody, we are talking about fullness, about the complete idea of the verb love. So you love somebody or you don't love somebody. You are not in the process of loving somebody. There are other verbs that we can use to express that. But let's think about your mom. When you say that you love your mom, you're indicating that it's the full idea of that feeling, right? You don't say, I'm loving my mom, because when you use the continuous form, you're indicating that that action is occurring for just a period of time. It's temporary. Remember the uses of present continuous. Present continuous is temporary activities. So, are you loving your mom just for these hours? Just for today? Just for this week? Just for this month or year? No, right? You love your mom or you don't love your mom. You love somebody or you don't love somebody. You're not in the process of loving it. You're not like thinking or getting through that. So verbs that express feelings tend to be stated verbs. Another example would be like if you're eating something at a restaurant, for example, and you don't say, I'm liking my hamburger, right? That's not possible. You like your hamburger or you don't like the hamburger. Now, if you want to say that this moment, this precise moment is good because the food is good, you can say, I'm enjoying my hamburger. So most of the time you can use other verbs to indicate temporary activities. But remember, state verbs, especially verbs that indicate how we feel, likes and dislikes, we cannot use them in the continuous form. So let me give you some verbs to think about that. We have mental states, for example, believe, know, and understand. We never put them in ing. They always go in simple forms. Verbs that describe emotions or likes and dislikes, like, love, hate, want. Again, we don't put them with ing. We only use them with the simple forms. And verbs connected with possession or permanent states. Have, own, be. For example, I have two dogs, right? You cannot say I'm having two dogs. I mean, you have the dogs or you don't have them. Like it's yes or no, complete action or not complete or non-existent. Remember that. So just as a summary, some verbs usually express states such as thoughts, feelings, possessions, right? And we use them with simple tenses, even if we mean just for the moment, right? But there are other verbs that we call action verbs, and they can be in simple tenses and they can also be in the continuous tenses or in the progressive form with ing. And those verbs indicate most of the time movement, right? And also physical movements. So think about that. Now, there are some exceptions for some state verbs that can also be used with ing, but the meaning of the verb changes, right? So we don't say I'm having a headache. We say I have a headache or I don't have a headache, but we can say I'm having lunch because have also is part of an idiomatic expression that we use to talk about eating, right? Have lunch, have breakfast. You can be in the process for that. So be careful about have because when we talk about possession, it's a state verb, but when we talk about an idiomatic expression like have lunch, have breakfast, have dinner, we can put that in ing. Yeah, there are many other examples like I think it's a great idea. It's your opinion. Yeah, and I'm thinking of getting a new phone. And I'm thinking of getting a new phone. It's a mental process, and we can use it with ing because you consider, right? When we talk about thinking with considering, it's a process and it can be in ing. But opinions, you have an opinion or you don't have an opinion. So think as an opinion is a state verb, and I'm thinking of as considering it's an action verb, right? So let's practice more about state verbs and action verbs.